Good day, everyone. My name is Maria De Luna, and I'm an immigration consultant. And now we're going to talk about work permits. So, work permits, let's just go. Work permits are essentially kind of different, okay? There's LMIA based work permits, and there are what I call open work permits. When it's LMIA based, it's usually restricted to one employer per work permit. And LMIA is basically a labor market impact assessment. It is an application by an employer to hire foreign workers. And then once that's approved, work permits will be applied for by the foreign worker. And then once that's approved, they can fly into Canada and basically start working for that specific employer. When we talk about open work permits, then there's parameters usually that focuses on open work permits, right? For example, spouses of skilled workers already in Canada can apply for open work permit. There's what I call PR application based work permit. So, for example, family class application for spouses or common law partners who are currently inside Canada can apply for an open work permit while the family class application is ongoing. There's what I call the bridging open work permit, where it is essentially tied to an economic class application. Say, for example, they have a provincial nominee application in place. It's already in the federal stage, and the federal government already gave them a file number. Bridging open work permits have very specific requirements. For example, it would, like I mentioned earlier, the application number on the federal side. Their current work permits must be 4 months or shorter. You cannot actually apply for a bridging open work permit if you do not have a status anymore. Say, you've lapsed your status and you're applying for restoration. We'll talk about more about restoration later, okay? And then so those are things needed to think of when doing a bridging open work permit. There's also what I call the postgraduate work permit, where certain international students who graduated may apply for a postgrad work permit or postgraduate work permit, and it's usually tied to how long their program was, or usually if it's a 1 year program, then they might get a 1 year postgrad open work permit, so things like that. Okay, so we were talking about restoration earlier. Okay, for most foreign nationals who are already in Canada and already have a work permit, they sometimes hear this term, implied status and restoration. Okay, implied status basically is, a work permit was applied for, and then, it took a while for the processing center to issue the approval. So from the time the the current work permit expired until a decision is made, that in between is an implied status if they have submitted an application before it actually expired. Restoration basically means, hence the term, you're restoring something that was lost. So say, for example, you forgot the expiry date of your work permit, right? And then it has lapsed, then you need to apply for a new work permit plus a restoration of that work permit. It's not considered legal status, and you actually have 90 days grace period to submit a restoration application. Okay, so let's look at that more. I have how do you say that, a graphical view of how I usually explain implied status versus restoration. So say, for example, your work permit expired February 1 of this year. And then you submitted January 2018 for a work permit, and you submitted it completely. You have a processing fee. it has been received by Vegreville. So because you have submitted before the expiry date, you actually will have an implied status after the expiry date. So implied status basically means it's a legal status. You carry the status of the old work permit that expired. So definitely you can continue working if, it's still the same employer, it's still the same position, position title, I should say, then you can work while waiting for the new work permit or until a decision is made on your file. Myth, I've mentioned about the myth mainly because people think that implied status is only for 3 months. Why? I think it was because back in the day, work permits are usually 3 months long, and and that's what they thought it was. Implied status is only for 3 months. Technically, implied status is until a decision is made on your file, whether it's an approval or a refusal. Okay? So, for example, you submitted a work permit and then for some reason the case processing center opened it after 4 weeks. And say for some reason they refused it. Okay? In that 4-week period, if you were on implied status, that implied status stops on that 4th week because the decision has been made. Okay? Another example is, for example, you submitted, like I said here, you submitted on January 20, Feb 1 had come and gone. It's already, mid-Feb. You can continue working until a decision is made on your file, even if it takes a long time for that decision. Okay, so say for example, right now you submitted a paper-based application, and right now it is over 100 days in processing time for paper application. So that would mean you have implied status for that over 100 days. Okay, 100 days period. Okay, now restoration. Say, for example, you submitted the application past February 1, your expiry date, because you forgot. Okay, because you forgot to submit, or maybe you were waiting for something and was not able to submit on time. So because you submitted after your expiry date, you already lost your status, and therefore you must apply for restoration. Restoration is not a valid status. You must submit a restoration within 90 days from your expiry date, and you cannot work. Okay, you cannot work until you receive your new work permit. Okay, so that's just the difference between implied and restoration. Some people would think, they were thinking maybe they should submit a restoration fee while they're on implied status because it's over 3 months. That's not the case. As long as you know that you submitted before your expiry date, it doesn't matter if it's over 3 months. You do not need to pay restoration if you know you submitted before your expiry date. Okay? Now, I was talking about LMIA earlier. Just wanted to touch base just very quickly what LMIA is. Okay? There's essentially three, or make it 4 LMIAs, because there's the LMIA to provide permanent residence or support to a permanent residence application, essentially a permanent job offer. Okay, it is a bit fast track compared to the regular LMIA. The LMIA that supports permanent residence application can be used to apply for a work permit or for a permanent residence. Supports a work permit and permanent residence or permanent residence application only. Okay, it is only for skilled job title offer. Okay, you cannot apply for this service center if it's for a lower skilled position or a semi-skilled position. If you're gonna do that, then you have to use the regular foreign worker unit, and it's only for a temporary job offer. It can be a longer process, and as I said, you can use this for a semi-skilled position offer, but definitely you could also use it for a skilled job offer. Okay, and then there's an LMIA for caregivers that's usually submitted in Toronto, and then of course there's also LMIAs for seasonal jobs. Okay, so that can be for a different topic. Okay, so let's see if we have anything else here. So yeah, okay, we'll give you an idea what that is, LMIAs. So as I was saying earlier, that the LMIA for the express entry, it can be either for support for both PR application and work permit, or support the PR application only. Okay, now when talking about work permits, I was talking about checking whether it's on implied status and whatnot, and I was talking about how long you're supposed to have an implied status. This is how you're going to look at it. Okay, so you go to the CIC website. Okay, so you type in www.cic.gc.ca. You go to the main page. Okay, and for you to be able to check if the processing time, you can go to this link, check application processing time. Okay, and then you select the proper application type. Say for work permit extension for a same employer. Yeah, we'll put same employer because we're going to talk about implied status, right? And implied status, as I've mentioned, it is a legal status, and you carry over the status of the old work permit that expired. So meaning for you to be able to work, it should be the same condition, same employer, same position title, and whatnot. You cannot use that implied status to work for a new employer. Okay, if you're going to work for a new employer, then you must wait for the new work permit to come out. Okay, so the processing time right now is 118 days for paper. Online is about 45 days. You could actually see what date they're working on, what applications they're working on. So for the online, December 18, paper base is October 6, right? And this is updated on a weekly basis. So you'd be able to check if your application is being processed or not. So if you submit a paper application and you submitted, say in this case September 2017, it's already October 6. What you should do is call CIC, okay? Because maybe you did not receive the decision, okay? So yeah, okay. So that's it for work permits. If you like to hear more infos about Canadian immigration related topics, please feel free to subscribe in our channel, in our YouTube channel, as we post topics about Canadian immigration on a not weekly basis, but we will make this a regular thing. Thank you.